What's up, YouTube? It's your old school expert, and today I've got an old school deck profile to show you guys. This is a deck I used to use way back in 2002. This is a Clown Control deck that uses the 2002 December ban list, so when Pharaoh Servant was first released. This deck is a lot of fun. It's got a lot of tech to it, and there are plenty of variants to this, but this is my version. You can do kind of like more of an aggro beatdown version of this deck. I've seen those. I remember seeing them back in the day too. Or in this case, it's more pure Clown Control with some direct damage. And this is what I used to run way back when. So we're going to start off with 3 Dream Clowns because this is the all-star of the deck. As you can see, when this card is changed from attack position to face-up defense position, select one monster your opponent controls and destroy it. So basically, you get him out with a card that I will go over in just a second. He comes out in face-up attack. Your very next turn, you put him in defense mode and kill one of your opponent's monsters. So it's really good for clearing out your opponent's beat sticks or flip effects. So next we got 2 Crass Clown, and the reason I only run 2 is because it's a little bit slower than Dream Clown. It's also not quite as powerful because it has to go from defense position to attack position, and then you get to bounce one of your opponent's monsters back to the hand. Now in the current meta, like bouncing to the hand is probably better than destroying, but back then it wasn't because you wanted to destroy your opponent's monsters. You didn't want to put them back in their hand. But this was great against something big like a Jinzo, Summon Skull, or a Blue Eyes. You know, whatever they have that's a tribute monster, put it back in the hand. They have to tribute for it again. So that was useful. Or just to stall your opponent out and then hit for direct damage. So 2 Crass Clowns. And then, so here's the support stuff. Those are really the main clowns. And then support stuff, we got 3 Giant Rats. As you guys probably know, when this is destroyed by battle, you can special summon 1 Earth-type monster from your deck and face-up attack position. So you could grab another Giant Rat if your opponent has more than 1 monster that they can attack again with. Or if they don't and they're done attacking after they hit this guy, then bring out your Dream Clown because it's an Earth monster. And then he comes into attack position. Then when your opponent ends their turn, you put him in defense and destroy whatever monster you want. So really, really useful. Gets your Dream Clowns out and gets them going. Then we got 3 Mystic Tomatoes. And you might be wondering, why 3 Mystic Tomatoes? Because there's only 2 Crass Clowns. So the reason is because obviously these are great just, you know, if one is destroyed, you could pull out another one. But yes, you can pull out Crass Clown, although there are only 2 and it's not as powerful as Dream Clown. However, 2 Sangans, back in the day, you could run 2. You could run 1 Witch of the Black Forest. I do not run that, and I'll explain that later, because Sangan can pretty much search for anything in this deck, and it's a little bit better than Witch. So 2 Sangans can also be brought out by Mystic Tomato. So there's lots of targets with Mystic Tomato. Next, we got 1 Cyberjar, because this is just great for, like, you're in a tough situation, your opponent's got a bunch of monsters, whatever. Cyberjar can really kind of bail you out. Next is the direct damage stuff. We got 2 Jinzo number 7. So this card, it's a direct attacker. As you can see, it says this monster may attack your opponent's life points directly. So this is really useful for when you've got your stall stuff out there and your opponent can't do a whole lot. Then you're just pecking away at them, and they really hate that. So 2 of those, these are dark monsters, can also be brought out by Mystic Tomato. And then 2 Rainbow Flowers, because they're earth monsters. And even though they're 100 attack points lower than Jinzo number 7, they can still be brought out by Giant Rat. So you got a couple more targets with Giant Rat in case you don't want to pull out a Dream Clown. So this stuff, I know it's low attack and everything, but there's a lot of stall in this deck, and these guys get really annoying to your opponent, especially late in the game. You want these late. You want to attack as much as you can with your Dream Clowns and your other stuff by disrupting your opponent's board. And then later in the game, just bust these out and finish them off. So let's get on. That's all it is for the monsters. It's not too many. So magic cards, it's fairly standard with the magics. There's just a few variations from other decks back then. So your magic trap removal, you got to have MSTs. They're clutch. No heavy storm in this deck because you don't want to destroy your own stuff. So 1 Monster Reborn, of course. 1 Pot of Greed. 1 Premature Burial. Really useful for bringing your clowns out and stuff. 1 Forceful Sentry, obviously you have to, this is just such a good card. No cost, you get to see your opponent's hand and you get to shuffle a card back into their deck. This is just such a phenomenal card. 1 Nobleman to cross out because Flip effects were just such a problem back then. Your opponent has a lot of Magician of Faiths, most likely. There's none in this deck, but most decks ran Magician of Faith back then, so this was just excellent, especially when you hit that Faith. Then we got a Raigeki, because you have to. Of course, Dark Hole, because again, you have to. It's just so necessary. Monster Destruction is so big in this format. Delinquent Duo, because it gives you a bit of advantage. Confiscation gets to your opponent's hand. Snatch Steal, this is for when they get a big monster out and you can't get rid of it with Dream Clowns, you steal it. Change of Heart, because again, it's one of those cards that's just so good. So Swords of Revealing Light, not every deck ran this back then, even back then, but I definitely would run this in this deck because as much stall as you can get is necessary. And then of course 3, Messenger of Peace for stalling, especially because everything in this deck can attack under a Messenger of Peace. Everything in this deck is under 1500 attack points. So these are great. You have this out, your opponent can't do anything, but you can smack them around with all the Dream Clowns, Crass Clowns, Mystic Tomatoes, Giant Rats, and those Jinzo number 7 and the Rainbow Flowers. And it's only 100 life points per turn. That's nothing. Next, we got Imperial Order. This is a little tricky because you don't want to negate your Messenger of Peace. So you really only use this when you need it, when your opponent uses a Raigeki or something, and it's just a devastating magic card that they just used. You kind of have to stop it. Next, you got Call of the Haunted, because it's just great monster revival. Mirror Force, because obviously, I mean, if you didn't run Mirror Force back in those days, you weren't competitive. And then finally, we got 3 Gravity Binds, because this card allows you to stall out. So obviously, Jinzo is a big problem with this deck. If you're facing a Jinzo, that's why there's 3 Messenger of Peace, because Jinzo will negate that Gravity Bind. And he'll definitely wreck your little guys. But there's a lot of defense. There's a lot of stall with this and then with these. And then a lot of defense because you've got all these Giant Rats and Mystic Tomatoes that are just going to annoy the hell out of your opponent. They just can't get to your life points. And then by the time they're done attacking, you've either got a Crass Clown or a Dream Clown out there doing some work. So this was a lot of fun to run. It wasn't the most consistent deck, but it was consistent enough to be a fun deck. I wouldn't run this in a tournament. Obviously for competitive builds back then, you wanted pretty much a beatdown deck, but this was a ton of fun as a fun deck and just a casual play deck because it could catch your opponent by surprise. And then what you would do is game 2, you would side out a lot of your support stuff. So you side out these like Gravity Binds or maybe the Messengers of Peace, side out the direct attackers, and kind of keep this meat and potatoes here, and then side in some beatdown stuff to just throw them off because they're going to be siding in like Heavy Storms and extra Mystical Space Typhoon and stuff, and then you're going to get rid of this stuff, and they're not even going to have anything to hit with that. So then you just beat them down. So anyways, that's the Clown Control deck from 2002. It's one of the first Clown Control decks that ever came out, and it was a ton of fun. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you, maybe if you ran a Clown Control, this sparked a little nostalgia. And as always, make sure you stay tuned for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh videos.